Over the years, technology has progressed in leaps and bounds, and it is sometimes difficult to keep up with modern-day high-tech. However, no matter what new system comes onto the market and whatever safeguards are used, there are always people that can outsmart the systems that are put in place. The following story took place in 2007, where families were terrorized by a tech-savvy stalker. In 2007, a series of cell phone calls were made from unidentified callers to families making specific threats on their lives. The callers were able to describe to the families what they were doing and what they were wearing. Needless to say, this terrified the families, believing their lives were in danger. The families claimed that the calls would be received at all hours of the night, where they threatened to take the lives of the children, the pets, and even their grandparents. Things then escalated when they received voicemails that played back recordings of private conversations they'd had. The families were totally baffled as to how the callers knew what they were wearing and what they were doing, and after months of police investigations, they were still no closer to finding who the callers were and were frustrated by the lack of any evidence. One particular family that appeared to take the brunt of most of the terrorizing calls was a Kuykendall family from Fircrest in Washington, who received threatening calls that went on for months. In 2007, 16-year-old Courtney Kuykendall started to receive random text messages from her friends. Her friends were asking her why she'd been sending them text messages that just said gay and nothing else. However, Courtney denied that she'd ever sent such a message, and although she was initially confused at what was happening, she thought nothing more of it. But that was just the start of her troubles, because from there on, things suddenly escalated. A short time later, her friends and family were also suddenly caught up in the frightening events, where they too started to receive threatening text messages and calls from an unknown source, who they named Restricted. They were given that name because that is what appeared on their caller ID whenever they called. The person or persons, who now went by the name of Restricted, started to become more violent, where they were threatening to sexually assault their targets and vandalize the schools they went to. They also threatened to take the lives of their pets. By now the messages were coming in 24/7. The calls were not only coming through on their cell phones, but were now coming through on their landlines. In an effort to totally block this person, the families now took the drastic action of changing their phone numbers and obtained new accounts. But this did not deter the phantom callers, and the calls kept coming without losing a beat. In one creepy incident, the Kuykendall family was in direct communication with the police because at this stage they were at the end of their tether. But in the middle of the phone call, all of their phones that were turned off suddenly turned on simultaneously, and to make matters even weirder, the phones were calling each other. They now believed the callers were using the family's own cell phones to spy on them. How else could they possibly know their every move and what they said and what they wore? Courtney must have felt she was going mad after the police informed her that the threatening messages had been traced to her phone. Yet at the time of the calls, her phone had been turned off. On another occasion, Kuykendall had just returned home from the police station and on checking their voicemail, found there to be a recording of the exact conversation they just had with the police. The unfortunate Courtney was now in the firing line, and because the calls are coming from her phone, she must be implicated in some way. So her parents took her phone off of her, but the vexatious calls continued and were about to take another dark turn. It was frightening enough when they were all receiving the calls and messages, but it now appeared that they could also see what they were wearing and what they were doing in their home. They were not safe anywhere. This led them to get a new security system fitted, but Restricted is now 2 steps ahead of them, when shortly after being fitted with the new system, they received a call from their tormentor, who somehow knew what the new password was and described what they were all wearing. Keeping in mind the Kuykendalls were not the only family being traumatized, as there was another terrifying incident where Andrea McKay was cutting limes on the chopping board and Restricted messaged her to say that they preferred lemons. To the present day, the police remain baffled by the incidents, but fortunately for the families, the ongoing harassment eventually ceased. Over the years, the police failed to make any arrests, and nobody ever came to their attention. Authorities could never confirm whether it was one stalker or many. However, they had recordings of the voice, which were described as throaty, juvenile rasps, as if stolen from a corny horror movie. There are many theories as to who the perpetrator could have been. And one theory is that Courtney had committed the hoax because much of it came from her phone. and she did it to get a face on TV. But she strenuously denied everything, saying, "Why would I do that to people I care about? Why would I harass my own family?" Her mother adamantly defended her daughter. Law enforcement officials theorised that these sorts of actions could be carried out by a tech-savvy teenager. He could also have stalked the family through more traditional means. One big question asked was, after so much terrorising by the caller known as restricted, why did the family keep using their phones and instead permanently turn them off? They should have fallen back onto a simpler form of communication, at least until the person eventually ceased what they were doing.